Here's a book I wrote, wanted to show anyone who might be interested. This is called Death in Global Folktales. I'm a big fan of folklore, mythology, fairy tales. As some of you know, this is the third book I've done in that space, but to me this subject is kind of the white whale, the big one, maybe even in the broadest sense possible, and not just in terms of subjects to collect old stories by. There's my front and back cover. That's a little thing I came up with. At least I never saw it anywhere before. I kind of like doing that mirror image. And here's the inside. It starts with an introduction, how novel. But chapter 1 is actually a little bit surprising because even though this is a collection of stories, chapter 1 is a collection of superstitions. And it's as large of a collection of superstitions about dying as I've ever seen. So in that respect alone, I think it's a valuable contribution. I have them organized by categories and subcategories, and as much as possible I use old quotations instead of encyclopedia-like entries. I think that's something new I bring to the table. A great illustration. There are a few illustrations in the book. This is not a picture book, but it does have a few visuals, and they're all fantastic. Some of them relate to famous things like Japan's 47 Ronin. Others relate to things that I guarantee you've never heard of before. Just flipping through and looking at some of the stories now, some are very, very short, some are long, even long enough to take up an entire chapter, and they really range from odd, interesting, humorous, and yes, of course, sad. If there's one thing in particular I think my collections do well, I think it's picking a lot of unusual suspects, so even if you're a folklore and mythology fan, you will probably have not read most of this material, and then organizing and sequencing them in an interesting way. My concept when I first started with books like this was to select and sequence the stories the way you would songs on an album. You know, really purposefully, so that hopefully the reading experience is more than the sum of its parts. Here's the table of contents, as you can see, and basically, yeah, that is the book. I'm very proud of it. I think the introduction and conclusion are the best things I've ever written. But the stories themselves are what really matter, and I love capturing and preserving stories that are otherwise overlooked and pretty much on their way to disappearing. 13 chapters, as you can see, but many, many stories. 52, depending on how you want to count, and that's not including the chapter full of superstitions that kicks the book off. So, author Sarah Huntington previewed this for me very nicely, and I love what she said, so I'm going to read it. Death in Global Folktales is a deep and often beautiful study of human nature and our timeless struggle to understand our mortality. Lastly, I guess I'll dare to say I think the book is a good grieving aid or instrument. It definitely was for me personally as a project, right, like developing it, writing it, and I think it can serve that purpose when being read. If you're interested in getting a copy of this independent passion project, please do. It's easily found on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and many other online retailers. What I'm going to do in some future videos is read from the book, especially from the superstitions, because believe it or not, those are quite fun. But that is it for now. Thank you for watching.